Part 28. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 281. It was so fast that Shuigoi's figure moved so that everyone even had the illusion of spatial displacement. It seems that the distance of more than 10 meters is just one step. Even Qianju himself didn't expect that Shuigoi's speed would be so terrifying that he wouldn't even have a chance to dodge. Presumptuous. At the critical moment, top masters such as Bagua Master Qi Wei, Archmage Han Ziwen, Yucatang Lin Ziluan, and 5-inch monk took action one after another. When the Bagua Zhang strikes, only yin and yang can be seen in one palm. It is obviously a palm technique, but it gives people the feeling of an indestructible sharp blade. The Archmage made seals with both hands, and a 3-foot-long divine light appeared behind his back. A god of war appeared out of thin air, with a red face and a white forehead. He held 2 iron whips and whipped them towards Shuigui. As for Lin Ziluan, he opened his mouth and made a ha sound, blowing out air from his mouth. It was invisible and qualityless, but it could hurt people's souls and knock out their souls from their bodies. The last one was the 5-inch monk. This guy was the most ruthless. Others were trying to stop Shuigui from attacking Qian Han's, but the monk took the opportunity to sneak up on him from behind. It can be said that these 4 people are all top-notch masters in the world, and their strength is no less than that of Qianshu. If the 4 of them join forces to strike, they will be invincible except to super-class masters. Shuigui's figure slowed back, and 3 paper figures appeared beside him. The paper figures held morning sticks and beat the 3 of them. At the same time, there was a swallowtail swing and a hanging kick in the air. It was the wind swing lotus leaf kick among the 12-10 legs. Monk Wukong didn't even have time to strike out with his Kaishan Dabia hand. He didn't expect Shuigui to turn around and deal with him first, and he also used their Shaolin Kung Fu. He quickly raised his hand to parry. But he didn't expect that Shuigui's legs were strange and changeable. His toes were a little bit on the ground, and he whipped his legs down in the air. The 5-inch monk's expression changed at this moment. He recognized this move at a glance. The 12-road 10-leg was the first to use the riding whip. He immediately did not dare to take it hard and jumped back to avoid it. Boom! A force of darkness hit the ground, and the force of the whip's legs caused the entire ground to sink in, whipping up a strong wind that shook the surrounding people almost to the point of flying. The 5-inch monk's eyes almost stared blankly, thinking that this thing is the 10-leg he knows. Before he could think about it, a strong wind blew in front of him, sweeping away the dust in the air. When the 5-inch monk raised his head, his eyes were already full of shadows of legs, and it was impossible to tell which one was real and which one was fake. He didn't even have time to parry, and suddenly there was a roar all over his body. In these 12 rounds, Tan's kicks were fast, accurate, and ruthless. There is a song that says, "The hands are like 2 doors. I rely solely on my legs to hit people. If I have 4 legs, I will be worried even if I see ghosts." In just 2 seconds, Shuigui was stunned to hit Wukong Monk all over, until he kicked Wukong Monk until he vomited blood, and the guy couldn't even react. Everyone looked at it in shock. Although the 5-inch monk could not be said to be an introductory disciple of Shaolin, he was still a first-rate master in the world. He claimed to be from an authentic Shaolin sect, but they did not expect that this authentic sect would actually be beaten to the point of vomiting blood by his own kung fu skills. But what outsiders don't know is that not all of Shuigui's 12-10 legs came from Shaolin. It's the Linkington kick, but there are only 10 Linkington kicks, and only the 11th and 12th paths of the wind swing lotus leaf kick and the Mandarin duck chain kick. The 2 variations come from Shaolin. When Shuigui visited Shaolin, it was for these 2 legs. I just didn't expect that after so many years, the kick skills learned from Shaolin would be used on Shaolin disciples. The 5-inch monk had been unable to enter the Shaolin temple for so many years at the foot of Shaishi Mountain. In the end, he was seriously injured by Shaolin's unique skills. Speaking of which, it is also lamentable that things are impermanent. Shwegoi didn't think too much. He turned around and faced Lin Ziluan and the others to kill him. The three of them thought that if they joined forces, Shwegoi would have to avoid his sharp edges even if he was very capable, but they forgot that compared to Bashenko, the secret skill of paper making is his main skill. The three paper figures were holding morning sticks, and they actually had a terrifying and cold aura. The stick techniques were also extremely weird and tricky, forcing the three of them to fight seriously. At this moment, Shwegoi joined in, attacking and defending in unison with the three paper figures, which made it even more frustrating. The pressure on the three of them increased dramatically. They were beaten to a pulp by Shwegoi before they could even last 4 rounds. The last one received a blow from the funeral stick and was nearly knocked out of his life, and they all retreated in defeat among the crowd. Su Tong, who was standing at the door, stared with wide eyes and felt blood boiling in his chest. The master is the master, and just 3 paper figures have such terrifying power. He couldn't help but think of the time when the master showed the mountain buckle. Under the mountain of white bones, there were all such paper figures. Everyone's scalps were numb now. 4 first-class masters were hung up and beaten by one person like this. Lin Ziluan didn't even have time to blow his breath out, and 2 big teeth were knocked out by Shwegoi. Now, let alone blowing his breath, he was afraid of leaking air even when he spoke. Chi Wei, the Bagua player, received 2 blows from the morning stick on her palms. At this time, her palms were swollen like pig's trotters. Archmage Han Ziwen was holding his head and crying, because Shwegoi didn't know what method he used, but a black light surged out of his palm, which shattered his godhead. Without his godhead, he, the great mage, would no longer be able to perform even the most basic techniques of summoning gods, let alone summoning gods and summoning magic weapons. This would be the end of his life's practice. As for the 5-inch monk, everyone took a look and saw this miserable guy lying on the ground. He was like a blood gourd, with air coming in but not coming out. He was probably going to be disabled even if he didn't die. This is too cruel. Grand Master. Finally, someone tremblingly shouted out those words, but the person who said those words also collapsed on the ground. What realm is the Grand Master? There are many people in the world today who can be counted on one hand. This is an incredible title. How many great masters are there in the 3 religions now? No one knows. But the problem is, there are no characters of this level in Shijulu. Not to mention great masters, even top-notch masters can only be found from history 300 years ago. At their level, they are really unruly. Everyone knows that Shwegoi is very strong, but who would have thought that Shwegoi has reached this point? Everyone's scalp was numb, but after all, they were human beings with naked eyes. They were not born with different pupils like spiritual creatures, and they could not see the destiny energy on Shwegoi's body that was as straight as a sword and penetrated into the stars. It's a pity that the Ma De boss in the northeast just happened to have his head beheaded by shoemaking during the day. Otherwise, when they met, the Ma De boss would have only needed to take a look through the eyes of the fox fairy and say directly, "Destiny, come on, let's all disperse. Why are there so many troubles?" However, without if, the Xian family would not leave Shenhaiguan. This is not only a rule, but also an invisible constraint. Who can say that his death may not be certain? Everyone was like this, Qinju was like this too, and he was shocked, hateful and jealous in his heart. Following the special power of the fairy treasure fragment, he has a long life, he has entered the Taoist mountain gate, he has become a monk twice before the Buddhist temple, and he is also involved in the yin industry. After so many years of accumulation, he found that his qualifications have reached this point. Xianbao can't change this problem. Now Shwegoi stood in front of him, a living old monster who had also lived for a few years, but had already entered the realm of a grand master, which was a threshold that he even thought was out of reach. Have you spent all your time living on a dog? But even though he was unwilling to do anything in his heart, Jianshu had no time to care at this time, because he didn't know how Shuigui planned to kill him next. However, what was unexpected was that Shuigui slowly stretched out his hand and only took off Jianshu's mask. He glanced at Senju's face that was burned by fire and curled his lips. How ugly. After saying that, he casually put the mask on Senju's head, turned around and walked away without looking back. It seems that from beginning to end it was just to take off his mask and see what this guy looks like. Everyone around stared blankly as Shuigui returned to the door. With a flick of his sleeves, he drew a deep and long line in front of everyone. After today, anyone who jumps the line will die. After that, he ignored them, led Su Tong into the door, and closed the door smoothly. For a moment, everyone looked at each other, and everyone looked at Kinju with strange eyes. The subliminal meaning seems to be saying, "Holy shit, is this the paper maker you are talking about? Not worth mentioning? A guy who can be overthrown by everyone together? Co-author, you brought everyone to die, right?" Jianshu was stunned for a moment, and it took him a moment to realize that the sentimental Shuigui, an old man, taking off his own mask was a fake, but the impact on their morale was real. Sure enough, when everyone saw the fate of the four masters on the ground, the courage in their hearts suddenly disappeared. They even thought, "Am I full enough to hold on? What are you doing here? Are you here to gain merit for others? Look at the line mark under the feet." Even though Shui Gairan has walked into the Shangqing Palace without leaving even a crack in the door for them, no one dares to step on this line mark, as if it is the source of death. Same finish line. As a result, these strangers arrived in front of Bamang Mountain with great interest, but ended up walking in disgrace. There was no one to talk to on the road. Even Senju feels a little autistic. That's not taking off your own mask, it's clearly a warning to yourself. If I take off your mask in public today, tomorrow I can take off your head without anyone noticing. Just when Kinju and the others were feeling discouraged, a figure suddenly appeared on the way and blocked everyone's path. The new strangers saw that this was a raw melon seed. Raw face, couldn't help but frown. On the contrary, Kinju and the others recognized this person. This person was none other than Jing Shaochang. I saw Jing Shaochang bowing his hands towards Jian Shao, and then said to everyone, "The master said that he has a way to make Shuigui die an unexpected death. I beg you seniors to wait for 2 more days. In just 2 days, Shuigui will be violent the day of death." Of course, no one would believe the crazy words of a melon seed. He was a great master. Not to mention the current Dharma-ending era, he was a terrifying figure even hundreds of years ago. Can he die suddenly in 2 days? It's not a joke, it's just making yourself look like a fool. Seeing everyone's expressions of disbelief, Jing Shaochang could only take out one thing and put it in front of everyone. "I will prove it with this thing." I saw something in Jing Shaochang's hand, which was square in shape, like a seal. When I looked carefully, I saw 3 big words written on it, Qin Tianjian. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 282. Master, that trick you just did was so cool. Please teach me how to do it sometime. Su Tong closed the door and raised his head to ask the master. In fact, Tan Leg is not a unique skill in martial arts. Maybe it is possible for master to defeat a first-class master so easily. There are really not many people in the world who can do it. Shuigui glanced at him angrily when he heard this. "You haven't finished the rice in the bowl, and you are still thinking about the food in the pot. Besides, what's the use of learning this? What the master means is that this is hard work and cannot be practiced in a year or 2. It is better to learn your own kung fu honestly. I plan to pass it to the football team if I have the opportunity in the future. Isn't it easier to kick a ball than kick someone when I have the time?" Su Tong joked again. It's a pity that the master obviously still doesn't understand the national football team's joke. He just shook his head and thought he was talking crazy again. As a disciple, he is good at everything, but he is not very good at two things. One is that he thinks too fast, and the other is that he does not follow the right path. If you don't follow the right path, it's okay to say that even if you are a master of Shurikung, as long as you keep your original intention, you will not fall behind in the lower vehicle. It's just that your mind is too active, and you might be in trouble in the future. Go and serve tea. The guests have been waiting for a long time. The master looked at the roof. As an old man, it's funny to stretch your muscles and do tricks in front of fellow Taoists. There was a loud laugh on the roof, followed by a figure jumping down from the roof and landing in front of Su Tong. He glanced at Su Tong and said with a smile, "My friend, I don't think you'll have to wait for a long time tonight." Huh? Su Tong took a look. Wasn't this the loser he met today? Of course, a man who can eat like this is not an ordinary person, but nowadays in L City, there is a mixture of dragons and snakes, and it is normal to meet one or two strange people, so he didn't think much about it at the time. He just felt that they were in love, and the two even made an appointment for the evening. "Let's go have soup together. I didn't expect that we didn't have to wait until night to meet so quickly." Yes, the white-haired old man in front of him is Xu Mingqing from the Quanzhen Longmen lineage. Xu Mingqing then raised his hand to Shui Gong and said, "It's really enviable for me to have such a good disciple. It's just a monkey throwing monkey." The two of them were polite to each other, as if they were no strangers to each other. Su Tong naturally did not have the right to interrupt when the elders were talking, but he did have the qualifications to listen. Obediently, he poured tea and water for Master and Xu Mingqing, and also took out the snacks from the prop book and put them on the plate. Xu Mingqing was polite at first and talked about a past event from that year. He was still young at that time, and had just stepped out of the mountain gate. He had a brief encounter with his master Shuigui in the capital. It was in a small tea shed, and the two happened to sit at the same table. At that time, neither of them spoke to each other. They just looked at each other and felt that the other person was not an ordinary person. They smiled at each other and toasted each other with a cup of tea, and they never saw each other again. But at that time, neither of them expected that after a hasty farewell, so many years had passed, and the two of them would actually meet again. The master took a sip and couldn't help but sigh. The water flows eastward in the morning and dusk, and everything is like a passing bird. After chatting, it was time to get down to business. Xu Mingqing put down the teacup in his hand and glanced at the top of his master's head. With his strength, even though he couldn't see it with the naked eye, he could still feel the great luck in his master's body. 3 years ago, destiny appeared. Originally, I wanted to take over this destiny, but I didn't expect my brother to be one step ahead of me. After speaking, he raised his head and looked at Master Shuigui. Destiny cannot be violated, but there is also a saying that man can conquer nature. Brother, I must think clearly. If you go further, you will be on the road of no return. Su Tong's heart skipped a beat as he listened. Although he didn't understand, it didn't stop him from hearing that Xu Mingqing's words seemed to imply that the master was in danger. The master nodded and did not deny Xu Mingqing's words, but he did not answer him directly. He only said half-jokingly, "It turns out that I think I stole your position, so you came to me today to settle the score." Xu Mingqing shook his head. "I don't have any worries when I see you today, it's just. Everything depends on human effort. If people don't do it, it won't happen. Some things always have to be done by someone. You do it and I do it. In the end, it's just for a result. The destiny is mine, so I am the destiny. As for the cause and effect, I am responsible for it." Seeing that his master had reached this point, Xu Mingqing had no intention of getting entangled anymore. He glanced at Su Tong from the corner of his eye, and finally focused his eyes on the entrance of the hall behind Su Tong that ordinary people could not observe. I saw a girl in green clothes standing there shivering in front of the hall, trembling all over and not daring to move. The girl was almost cursing in her heart. How could she not recognize the person in front of her? It was Xu Mingqing who killed her younger brother Ma with a sword today. It is said that they are also used to being domineering in the northeast. In addition, the three northeastern provinces are also large. Even if they don't go out of Shanhaiguan, there is a feeling that the world is huge and they can do whatever they want. It is this kind of self-good spirit that makes them dare to have the idea of taking action with Xu Mingqing. But little did they know that the water in the Central Plains is very deep, and now the water in L City is even more unfathomable. There was an undercurrent surging overtly and covertly, and she didn't expect Xu Mingqing to raise her hand and kill them with a sword. From the beginning to the end, even she didn't understand where the sword came from. At this moment, Xu Mingqing glanced at her, his eyes were like sharp swords, giving her the illusion that as long as she stepped out of the hall, she would be cut into countless pieces in an instant. I thought to myself what kind of evil obstacles I had created, and what was the promised era of Dharma ending. Didn't we agree that the masters of the three religions would not come out? Why do all I encounter are those scary old monsters? Hey, it turns out she's here. What a coincidence. Xu Mingqing smiled, pointed to the girl behind Su Tong, and said to Su Tong, "My little friend, I didn't prepare anything for the class today, but since I saw her falling into your hands, she is as good as me. It's just that you have to bear the responsibility for the cause and effect in the end, and I feel sorry for it. I'm giving this to you. If someone from the Hu family comes to visit you in the future, you can use this to help you." As he said this, Xu Mingqing took out a tips bag from his pocket and handed it to Su Tong. Su Tong took the brocade bag with both hands, and intuitively felt that the brocade bag was empty as it fell lightly in his hands, but he still hurriedly thanked him. "The elder is very grateful for the gift. Thank you for the treasure, senior." A simple and clear sentence, but it made Xu Mingqing smile and narrow his eyes. This was not the first time that Zhao Kuangsheng had heard the name Xu Mingqing. He thought he was a wild man, but unexpectedly he turned out to be a shrewd hosen. This would make anyone feel uncomfortable. The tree was green and he was not in a hurry to leave, so he sat down and chatted with the master. Su Tong wisely chose to retreat silently to boil water. It wasn't that he wasn't curious, but the two of them were chatting too profoundly. They would throw around a professional term or quote a passage from some book, which made the two of them talk more and more like two monks reciting sutras. He also talked so happily that he felt like he was about to doze off after listening to 2 or 3 sentences. He stood by the stove, holding his chin in his hands and looking at the flames in the stove. Then he turned his eyes to look at the kit that Xu Mingqing had just given him. Anyone who picked this thing up would feel it was empty, so Su Tong threw it directly into the prop book. I wanted to see if the prop book would give him any entries, but when I saw it, the good guy didn't even give me a question mark. If he hadn't known from the conversation between his master and his master, this old man was not an ordinary person. Su Tong would have doubted whether this old guy was lying to him. In any case, he came here for free, so he might as well leave it in the prop book to eat dust. This discussion finally ended when the sun went down. After all, in this era of extremely inconvenient transportation, there are too few opportunities for everyone to meet. It takes half a year to write a letter, and a discussion is often more than 10 years apart, but it is still fresh in the memory. It does not mean that the memory is too good. But every goodbye may be an eternal farewell. Sunlight irradiates the earth. Standing in front of the stone steps of Shangqing Palace, the northern awning is not high, but you can still see the dim dusk in L City in front of you. The lanterns are starting to light up, and the clouds are misty. I don't know whose cooking fire is there, and I don't know how much joy and sorrow there are tonight. The master and Xu Mingqing stood side by side, looking at the twinkling lights in the distance and the clouds and mist being emitted from the chimneys of the factory at the other end. "That's great," Xu Mingqing sighed. Master Shuigui on the side nodded, "Yes, the future will definitely be better." After saying this, the two looked at each other, but their eyes had completely different emotions. The former was looking in the distance, while the latter was looking forward to it. In the end, Xu Mingqing stopped going to drink soup with Su Tong and strode down the mountain as the sun set. Just when he was about to walk down the mountain, he looked back, bowed deeply in the direction of the master with both hands, and he knew that this bow would be a farewell forever. "Therefore," I sang while walking, with a loud and medium thick voice, and each word was like a pearl. "The bright moon pearl cannot be worn, and the city wall cannot be nourished. Everything in the world is in vain." A drunken song echoed far away in the gaps between the ravines and forests. Singing all the tricks of rise and fall is not only a farewell to this friend, but also a denunciation of this era that is about to end. 100 years have passed by, and the fame and wealth are as high as the generals. I don't see Bamang Mountain. There are no buildings lined with stone sheep, stone tigers, etc. In the old days, there were many tombs of emperors. Today, foxes and rabbits are stung, and broken monuments are broken to make way for walking. It is said that after the Bamang Conference, 30 years later, an old Taoist walked in the Bamang Forest Park and walked up the stone steps of the Shangqing Palace again. He looked at the scenery in front of him, but his turbid eyes seemed to penetrate after passing time and space. Looking at the non-existent figure beside him, he said to himself, "It's really good." Thanks to the leader of Swaydane Fairy Dust Prison, 3 updates tonight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 283. Outside the drum tower at night, in the beef offal soup restaurant. Wang Gong lay on the table with a bored look on his face, reading the newspaper. Of course, he loves reading newspapers, not because the content in the newspapers is good looking, but because the newspapers recently reprinted the new novel The Legend of the Condor Heroes from Mingpao magazine, and he has been fascinated by it recently. Since the last antique exchange meeting, the enthusiasm in the store has gradually cooled down. Business is not as busy as before, and Wang Gong's father can naturally go back to sleep peacefully. Leaving his son in a haunted store is very fatherly. As night fell, there were not many living people in the store, and the number of unusual customers gradually began to increase again. But Wang Gong was not worried, because when the master left last time, he left a large amount of money for him. He put it on the table and allowed the guests to take one piece by themselves after drinking the soup. Occasionally there will be some grateful guests who know that Wang Gong likes to hear some mysterious things, so they will tell him some things they know. For example, there were gold and silver jewels hidden outside the eastern suburbs of the city. When Wang Gong heard this, his eyes lit up and he asked where. Not far away, 30 miles to the east, there is a grave of a high official. If you dig it, there will be treasures underneath. Haha. Love is like robbing a tomb, take your time and don't give up. It is illegal to rob tombs, and you will be shot if you are caught. I am still young and have not yet married. Another person came and said to him, I have a big secret. Wang Gong pricked up his ears. A lot of experts have come to L City recently. You can recommend yourself and maybe you can be accepted as a disciple. When Wang Gong heard this, he quickly asked the other person who he was and where he was. As a result, the other party spread his hands and said, then how do I know? Get out. Next one. I know, an old customer raised his hand and walked up to Wang Gong excitedly. Where is it? Wang Gong's eyes shone, thinking that he was a reliable old customer, and he could drink soup for 1,000 days in just one moment. On the S. Unexpectedly, As soon as the other party opened his mouth, Wang Gong was immediately dumbfounded and asked confusedly, "What's on your butt?" Seeing that Wang Gong didn't understand, the other party quickly said, "The birthmark, gourd-shaped, is on the buttocks of Widow Li next door." Mentioning Widow Li, Wang Gong blushed and waved his hand impatiently, "Go, go, drink." "Who asked this? But don't you often peek at her bathing? This afternoon, I saw you lying on the bed. Get out." Wang Gong threw a sesame seed cake over and was almost pissed off by these wandering ghosts. The good guy didn't have any useful information, but he knew his own interests and hobbies clearly. When he was depressed, he heard a ding-dong sound on the door beam. As soon as Wang Gong looked up, he saw a girl in Tsingyi strolling in. The girl looked so pretty, with a small nose and big eyes, black hair like a waterfall, and a pair of furry little ears on her head. Not to mention how cute she was. Wang Gong's eyes widened when he saw it. He had seen a lot of female ghosts, but he had never seen such a beautiful one. When the girl looked towards him, her green eyes shone with a different kind of light. Wang Gong's mind was foggy, and he felt as if his soul was about to be lost. I am Guoer." After Wang Gong finished speaking, he almost slapped himself in the mouth. He had not yet come out of the novel state. As a result, a big foot suddenly kicked out from behind the door and kicked the girl's elastic buttocks. Wang Gong's heart almost broke when he saw his goddess's fragrant buttocks being kicked so roughly. "I brought you here for team building, not to make you happy." The familiar voice made Wang Gong startled. He saw a hand outside the door, lifting the curtain and coming in. It was the master he hadn't seen for a while. Seeing that familiar face, Wang Gong suddenly came to his senses. He felt like he was in a trance, and the uncontrollable impulse just now disappeared from his mind. He hurriedly walked out from behind the counter. "Brother Zhao, you are finally here. If you don't come here, my place will become a hellhole." After he finished speaking, he took a look and saw that Su Tong was holding 3 sticks of yellow incense, and there were 2 unfamiliar faces standing behind him. The former is dressed in white, with a high nose, red lips and white teeth, and fair and tender skin that looks like a young man. He looks very much like the jade-faced scholar in the novel, a perfect young man. It's just that the eyes and eyebrows, well, they are so vulgar. Anyone who looks at them will curl their lips, and 4 words can pop up in their mind: evil eyebrows and rat eyes. Looking at the other man, he was a yellow-faced man. He was thin, but his face was full of gloom and murderous intent. Anyone who looked at him would be frightened. If Chen Jian looks like a angry-eyed King Kong, with a calm expression on his eyebrows, then this yellow-faced man will give people the sinister and vicious look of a murderous robber. Therefore, it is not true at all to say that appearance comes from the heart. Look at the 3 people next to Su Tong, a vixen. She looks both sexy and ugly. No matter how good-looking or handsome a rat spirit becomes, he can't change his nature as a rat no matter what his eyes look like. As for the resentful spirits, if you think about it, according to what the master said, they are evil ghosts in the yin and yang dao. They eat living people alive, like 3 mouthfuls and 1 fat person. When the 4 of them entered the soup restaurant, the soup in the hands of the diners immediately lost its aroma. Bang! The chopsticks in the hand of a diner suddenly fell to the ground, and he stared at Su Tong and his group with straight eyes. They could not distinguish anything else, but they might be able to distinguish the special aura of Xian'er. What's more, there are terrible things like resentful spirits. They are wandering ghosts. They are like snacks in front of them. That ghost is not afraid of them. Everyone, go on, we are just here to have a meal and do some team building. Su Tong noticed the fear emanating from these wandering souls, and quickly comforted them, and took out a wad of banknotes and handed them to Wang Gong. "They are all mine." Wang Gong was immediately startled when he saw this situation. He thought to himself, "Good guys, These are a bunch of evil spirits that can scare ghosts into looking like this. Thinking of this, Wang Gong's unreasonable thoughts about the fox lady disappeared. After getting along for a long time, he also knew Su Tong's temperament, so he quickly took the money. Uncle Zhao pays for everyone today. Each person has 4 taels of meat at home, everyone is moved or not. What can they say? The sound of each one is like a mosquito. No one dares to move. No one dares to move. Seeing this, Su Tong ignored these wandering souls and placed the money on the table as usual, looking at the entrance of the soup restaurant out of the corner of his eye. Sure enough, the silent treasure appraisal expert was still sitting there, just like a Wangfu stone. Seeing his eye contact, she just nodded without any trace. Wang Gong brought the soup and a few pancakes for each person. There were no taboos between rats and evil spirits. Think about how rat spirits eat in the wax museum. After giving Wulingzi to a living person, he cut off the meat one by one, cooked it in wax oil and ate it. He ate it with gusto, but the person who suffered the knife was miserable. After eating and drinking enough, he would turn people into ghosts and carve out a layer of skin for these ghosts with wax. This was his daily pleasure. The wraith spirit is even worse. In the yin and yang dao, he is only in the middle of the food chain at best, and this is still at full level. There are many scary things in the yin and yang dao. They can chew some bones on weekdays and it will be a simple meal. He will even eat zombies. What can he be picky about? So the two of them ate with gusto. As for the vixen, she frowned at the beef offal soup. But seeing the 3 of them eating so deliciously, they could only hold their noses and take a few bites. They felt that the soup was neither fishy nor oily. Only then was he willing to imitate Su Tong and soak the pancakes in a bowl and eat them slowly. It's a pity that the Habe brand soda in L City has not started to be produced these days. Otherwise, a bowl of hot soup and a bottle of ice-cold soda would taste so good. No wonder in reality many fat people stay up late at night and come out to drink soup. Until you have eaten and drank enough, according to this process, for normal team building, you should go to the massage room next door and order a technician of your choice. But Su Tong doesn't have this hobby. Well, of course it's because the people are simple now, and catching him is a serious crime, so naturally he doesn't have such treatment. But for team building, Su Tong certainly didn't bring them out just to let them eat. Before, everyone couldn't talk, but the resentful spirits could talk but didn't like to talk. Now that he has set up the hall and can open the hall to the outside so that everyone can speak within his own scope, Su Tong certainly wants to know who is under his command and solve a thorny problem by the way. When Su Tong asked, the 3 people in front of him didn't dare to hide anything. After all, they were their own masters, and they had to listen to what the master said. The white mouse told his story. The old nose had grown longer. Su Tong and the others listened for half an hour before they realized that the mouse had been hidden in the monk's belly by a Taoist. So as soon as it opened its eyes, it seemed as if it never lacked food and just ate the monk's meat. Before leaving, the Taoist taught him a set of cultivation methods. In addition, the monk's meat was very rich in spirituality, and he could occasionally eat 2 stone-like crystals. Over time, he gained spirituality. Leaving aside the rest of the story, the origin of this white mouse is a bit mysterious. Even the vixen on the side was very surprised. He thought that this mouse might be a fairy who escaped from the Hui family. Of course, there was a resentful spirit below, but he spoke in a confused manner. Within 10 minutes, everyone lost interest. As for him saying that he was fine in the yin and yang dao, Su Tong's figure was born in a flash of his mind, and then he was swept away by a wave of energy. The hurricane brought out the Onmyato. Su Tong thought in his mind that it was probably because he damaged the polyposis tumor and triggered the punishment mechanism. The resentful spirit and the white mouse had finished telling their origins, and the 3 of them couldn't help but look at the vixen. The vixen could only sigh and tell her story one by one. There will be another update in the evening. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Ganxiao. Chapter 284. The matter was also simple. She focused on the key points and explained her identity clearly in just a few sentences. The 5 great families in the Northeast are controlled by 5 great spiritual beings. The spiritual beings are not really immortals, they are just names. In the end, they are still animals, but they are more spiritual than animals. Animals can reproduce, so in addition to the heads of the 5 families, their children and grandchildren are also the leaders. Each hall leader has different responsibilities. Some are to inquire about information and see whose house is haunted by goblins, which house is haunted, etc. Some are responsible for cleaning up these goblins, while others are responsible for patrolling the territory to see if the newly opened hall is open. Just follow the rules. As for Ma Di, haha, he is their human spokesperson. To put it bluntly, he is just a wage earner. Since ancient times, the immortal family has not left Shenhaiguan, but this time they received the seal from the Kintian prison, and they will come even if they don't come. As soon as the 5 families gathered together, they asked an elder named Hu En to come here to take a look. If there was a chance, they would grab it. If not, they would escape as soon as possible. Little did they know that they had memorized the idea and didn't read the almanac when they went out. When they arrived at City L and found a place to rest, they met the Shu Mingqing. They thought they could compete and regain some face. But who would have thought that Shu Mingqing didn't have martial ethics, so he raised his hand and sent Hu En to see the king of hell with a sword. From the beginning to the end, they didn't see clearly how Shu Mingqing used the sword. They intuitively saw a bright light in front of their eyes, and Hu En the neck has been cut off. You already know what happened next without going into details. That's it? After hearing this, Su Tong nodded silently. The fact that Shu Mingqing could chat so congenially with the old man showed that he was at least on the same level as the old man, and he was worthy of the ceiling of combat effectiveness in this script. Fortunately, the other party doesn't seem to be planning to side with the stranger, otherwise the master might be in trouble. His worries are completely unfounded. Anyone who has reached that state will know what is going on. Moreover, the practice of the Quanzhen lineage does not require merit. It is said that a golden elixir, a pure yang of the Great Road, transforms into a god, can be used to practice martial arts and cultivate the mind, and does not even bother to use external forces to practice. Even the low-ranking people are like beggars in the eyes of others, including Northeast Dima and Bashuwichgu, who are in the chain of contempt. Otherwise, how could they kill Hu En with a sword at the slightest disagreement? I believe that if the master was not as powerful as Shu Mingqing, I would probably listen to his wishes and plan to compete with the master for the so-called destiny. Oh, by the way, you just said Hu En, then Hu Qi, do you recognize Hu Laokai? In the second script world, I found a thief's cave in the tomb of the spirit Gu King. In the thief's cave, I found a diary written by Hu Laokai. Later, I found his body under the crystal bed. I also found a token prop card on him, which seems to be able to summon some kind of fairy. Su Tong speculated that this person might have some special quest lines, but their situation was not optimistic at the time. After the matter ended, he did not intend to go to the Northeast to confirm it. Instead, he went to find the girls with big braids and wished them a happy life. The family members went away. As soon as the script world came out, Hu Qi's token disappeared, and this incident became a mystery. There happened to be someone from the Hu family in front of me, so I could ask him clearly by the way. Hu Laokai. I recognize him. Is he still alive? When it came to this person, Vixen didn't even need to think about it. She remembered it all at once. Fortunately, she had lived for almost 200 years, otherwise she really didn't know this person. It was dead. It was just a corpse when it was found. Su Tong mentioned Hu Laokai's incident and briefly told what happened. Then he rummaged through the prop book, found the diary, and threw it in front of the vixen. She picked it up and took a look, without looking at the contents inside. She was sure it was correct just by seeing the handwriting on it. This is Hu Laokai, who has been missing for a long time. The reason why she could recognize it was because Hu Laokai was also a member of the Hu family. Just as the old fairies were breeding, the Hu family's horses were also breeding, and because of their protection, the Hu family was prosperous. Hu Laokai still watched him grow up. However, this guy was born with special quirks and was restless. None of the Hu family immortals liked him very much, so he simply invited an old Lu family immortal to be his companion. Oh, by the way, the 5 fairies are in the same spirit and have connections with each other. It's a bit like a marriage relationship. It can be said that they are on guard and leave some protons to each other. This is why Hu Laokai was able to summon Lu Jiaxian. Okay, everyone has explained their origins clearly, and half of Su Tong's goal has been accomplished. Why half? Because there always has to be a name. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient to call them to do things in the future without a name. Of course, the matter of naming was decided by me as the headmaster. After all, naming is also a technical job and requires knowledge. I didn't see in Huki's diary that his eldest brother's son was still named Hukangan, and he still asked the master to give him pork. Did you get up? His eyes glanced at the white-faced mouse. From now on, you will be called Jixiang, and you will manage logistics. Jixiang sounds pleasant to my ears. White mouse. Immediately, he glanced at the yellow-faced resentful spirit again. Your yellow face will make you rich. Wraith. Good luck and wealth, this is the name. One is a man-eating monster, but he doesn't look auspicious, and the other is a murderous ghost. Where can he make a fortune? Su Tong didn't care about this, he just wanted to call him fluently, and when he glanced at the fox, everyone around him was dumbfounded. Before Su Tong could say anything, she hurriedly got in front of him and acted coquettishly towards him with a pitiful look on her face. I have a name, Dai Ling-er. Headmaster, you can just call me Ling-er. Didn't you ask me to be the welcome lady? The name Ling-er matches my position so well. You see, otherwise the fox's brain works very fast. Su Tong almost fell for what this little girl said. If he had muttered a bell as soon as he opened his mouth, he would probably open her mouth and agree immediately. By then it will be too late to regret it. Huh. This routine is familiar to everyone who wants to make a fortune. Su Tong curled his lips and looked at her with a sneer, which made her heart tremble, and she suddenly had an ominous premonition. Sure enough, as soon as Su Tong spoke, she collapsed. Master, I am short of a girl. I will make an exception and upgrade you. From now on, you can be my maid. Since you are a maid, you can't call me Ling-er, otherwise Ling-er will be there every day. There are so many annoying people around me, so I'll call you, yeah, it's easy to make a living with a bad name. The name was full of nostalgia and earthy flavor, which almost made Dia fall to her knees. Unfortunately, as soon as the headmaster opened his mouth, they had no choice but to accept the name with tears in their eyes. Seeing that they had accepted his name, Su Tong said happily that today's team-building task was a complete success. But I still have a little regret in my heart. Big Fat's situation is very special. I tried to bring Big Fat into my palace, but I got a serious warning from the prop book for doing so. If he does this forcefully, Big Fatty will lose his ability to regenerate and can only retain one of the 3 forms. Such a warning made Su Tong weigh it again and again and had no choice but to give up. When the stick of incense was almost burned, Su Tong asked the 3 of them to go back to the entrance of the hall to rest, and he sat here to wait for a while, because he and Gao Zhou had agreed today to gather here at night. I don't know what kind of news Gao Zhou can get if he goes out to inquire for information by himself. After waiting for a while, Gao Zhou didn't come. At this time, the bell outside the door rang, and a woman and a child walked in. The woman's gaze first circled around, and then she took the child and sat in the corner. He glanced around with alert eyes and saw that there were many people here. He felt relieved and took the boy's hand and said, "Yang Yang, are you hungry? Mommy will buy you something to eat." The boy thought for a while and nodded. When the woman stood up to serve the soup, the boy glanced around curiously, and finally looked at Sutong, or to be precise, at the three people behind Sutong. His little eyes lit up. "Uncle, the big sister behind you is so beautiful." Sutong didn't pay attention to the mother and son at first, but after hearing these words, he was stunned for a moment. "My own hall is completely invisible to the naked eye. Let alone ordinary people, even top-notch alien masters may not be able to detect it. This child can actually see it?" Surprised, the woman had already walked back. After hearing what the boy said, she hurriedly scolded, "Yang Yang, don't talk nonsense." After saying that, he apologized to Sutong with an embarrassed look. Sutong nodded and said nothing more, but he paid more attention to the boy in his heart. He looked carefully at the boy's eyes, and found that there seemed to be a vague black ball in the boy's eyes. Unless you look carefully, you can hardly see clearly. Double eyes. His heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but think of a record in the book King Yun Yishulu given to him by Master Song Lao, which said that some people were born with double pupils and were born with the ability to see ghosts and gods. But this kind of person is a unique one in a million, and the people with double pupils in history are all big shots with hands and eyes that can reach the sky, and they only appear once in hundreds of years. Those who are far away cannot be studied. Anyway, there are all kinds of names, such as Xiang Yu and Keng Ji. Some of them may be real, but most of them are added by later generations, and their credibility is not high. But I did see an article in Mr. Song's book. The article mentioned that when he was about 40 years old, he met a young man with double pupils in his eyes who could talk to all things and communicate with all beasts. But Yuxin only wants to stay in a zoo and work as a nurse. I didn't expect to encounter such strange pupils here. I wonder if this child is the person mentioned in Songlishu. After all, pupils are too rare. It's a pity that Sutong has no intention of accepting a disciple. Otherwise, if other strangers meet him, they will take the child away no matter what. The woman helped the boy break the pancake and said, "Don't run around in the future. Look at how dangerous it is today. What will mom do if something happens to you?" The child didn't say a word when he heard the words. He silently put the pancake in his mouth. He just ate it and shed 2 tears as big as a bean. The woman didn't notice at all and kept talking on the side. At this time, Gao Zhou finally arrived too late. As soon as he entered the door, he shouted to Wang Gong to bring him a bowl of soup quickly, with more oil and more spicy sauce. Then he sat down in front of Sutong and said, "There is news, don't tell me, I really got a lot of news." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 286. Gao Zhou has been in the beggar's den all day today. As he expected, the beggar's gang has been completely finished and disbanded. A young elder pulled a group of people to support themselves on the mountain, and another group of people saw that life had no energy, and the gang became like this, so they simply went home. However, there are so many beggars who have traveled all the way to L City, but the gang was wiped out without even taking a bite of fart. If you ask them to go home now, they will not be happy. They will have to beg here for a while no matter what, at least for a while. Earn your travel expenses. After Gao Zhou returned with chicken, duck, and fish, these beggars became more enthusiastic. On the one hand, it was because Gao Zhou had entered the Shangqing Palace and brought back news about the death of the gang leader, and even buried the gang leader himself. On the other hand, it was also because Gao Zhou was very popular in the gang before, and after all, he had many side missions. At present, the group is leaderless. Seeing Gao Zhou come back is like finding a backbone. Gao Zhou asks them to find out the news about Qinzhou and other strangers. The beggars immediately dispersed, and within 2 hours, news began to be passed to him one after another. Although these beggars only know how to beg for food, in fact, during the Republic of China, the beggar gang once became the largest gang in the world. There were even many powerful strangers who passed down some unique skills to the gang. For example, the art of hearing from all directions or the art of observing the 6 paths with eyes are the basic standard equipment for the core disciples of the beggar clan. There are also flying pigeons to carry messages. It is said that there are people in the beggar clan stronghold who specially tame carrier pigeons. In their heyday, they just flew in and out every day. No less than 100 pigeons were born. He even sent messages to the army during the anti-Japanese war and so on. It used to be considered a decent one, but it's a pity that it has rotted into mud, otherwise Master Shuigui wouldn't have killed him so cruelly. Gao Zhou stayed in the beggar's den for a long time, constantly reading the news that came to him, and he really learned a lot of things. First of all, Qinzhou and the others were concentrated in a small village on the outskirts of the city during this period. The smell of medicine wafted out every day. They were probably recovering from their injuries. Later, it was confirmed that a beggar even found out their prescription. But this is understandable. After all, many people were injured after the last ghost market. In addition, the 4 first-class masters who were seriously injured by the master outside the Shangqing Palace yesterday meant that Qinzhou and the others suffered a lot of losses. These gossips kept coming, and later they actually brought a rather strange news to Gao Zhou. Someone inquired about Senju's past. It is said that he learned about it from a young Taoist priest who happened to come to see Xu Mingqing. He was probably also a disciple of Quanzhen Longmen. From his mouth, I learned that it was Qinzhou and his group who released the news about breaking into the Forbidden Palace to seize the immortal treasure. They were the culprits in the turmoil that year. The news was released and attracted many evil spirits to join. As a result, these evil spirits became cannon fodder. The reason why Qinzhou and the others were able to obtain the immortal treasure safely was because there was an eunuch in the palace who acted as an internal support for them, and they cooperated internally and externally to obtain the immortal treasure. After they obtained the immortal treasure, they wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Unfortunately, they encountered Xu Moking. The Thousand Hands group was Xu Moking's opponent. Huo Wuji, who had the strongest fighting ability, was instantly killed. The immortal treasure was also divided into 4. In the end, the Qinzhou trio captured 3 pieces, but the 4th piece mysteriously disappeared. In addition to Qian Shu, the other person was the boss of Fenglai Tower. Su Tong already knew these things, so the 3rd person was the eunuch who worked for them back then. This person's name is Li 11, but he also has another identity. It is said that he is a traitor to the mission section. He rebelled from the mission sect for unknown reasons. After so many years of wandering around, the mission sect wanted to hunt him down, but he escaped many times. Mission section. Su Tong said thoughtfully, it turns out that the Buddha statue under Bamangyingyun Peak is his fault. It must be him. Gao Zhou took a sip of the soup in the bowl and said, no one knows what Li 11's name is now. People who know him call him Master. He also showed up in a hurry not long ago to guard the city and the capital. All the Hunjiang dragons around Qinzhou were taken away, and their whereabouts are unknown now, so they must not be holding back anything good. After speaking, Gao Zhou came over mysteriously. I heard the news that they seem to be planning to take action in 2 days, and they are reorganizing their troops now. 2 days later. Su Tong calculated the time in his mind. There was still 1 day left before the Mid-Autumn Festival in 2 days. Why did he choose to do it at this time? Just as he was wondering in his mind what these guys were planning. The mother and son at the other table had already stood up and seemed ready to leave. Su Tong had no intention of interfering, but when the boy walked to the door, he suddenly ran back and picked up the 2 guide coins on Su Tong's table. Yang Yang, what are you doing with this? The mother immediately became angry when she saw her child taking other people's things. He ran over and asked him to put it back, but Su Tong just waved his hand. "It's okay, just take it and play with it." On the contrary, I was surprised. I am afraid that this child who took the guide money was definitely not as naughty as he was, so he asked tentatively, "You know so much, who taught you?" "I heard on the road that they say you have to have money when you go. Only with money can you walk comfortably." The child looked at Su Tong. Su Tong took a closer look and found that the child's eyes did have a pair of double pupils. He thought that a person with double pupils, even a child, was much smarter than ordinary people. The child didn't seem to want to take his guide money in vain, and said, "I won't take your money in vain. I will tell you one thing in exchange." Su Tong was suddenly even more surprised. He looked at the child carefully with his deep eyes, and suddenly felt that this child might not be as smart as he was. So I patiently listened carefully. The child walked up to Su Tong's ear and whispered, "Remember to take the red one." "What?" Su Tong was startled and didn't understand what the child meant. When he was about to ask, the child had already pulled his mother away. "What's the red one?" This was said in a vague and confusing way, but it also made him realize that the world of the script is far from being as simple as what he saw. Even in this age of the end of the Dharma, when all laws have withered, there are still many things that are difficult to explain. By the time he and Gao Zhou returned to Shangqing Palace, it was almost dawn. He was still thinking about the child along the way, and wanted to follow him to have a look, but when he chased him out, the child had disappeared. I took a closer look with my dark vision and found the shadow of a carriage in the distance. The carriage was hung with a white lantern. It ran lightly and disappeared without a trace in an instant. That should be the carriage leading to the underworld, but I don't know if the child got on the carriage with his mother. Just as they were thinking about it, the two of them pushed the door open and saw Chang Miao actually starting a set of boxing skills in the yard. The boxing skills are very ordinary. Although Su Tong is a layman, with the blessing of the prop card close combat technique, he can still see some skills. But what shocked him was that not long ago, Chang Miao almost lost his breath while meditating. Her clumsy appearance was completely different from the one before him. Judging from his agile movements, he can't be called a master, but at least he can deal with a few ordinary people no problem. His strength is not high, but how long has this guy already made such rapid progress? The master sitting on the side was sitting on a chair, drinking the tea brought by Ci Min, and from time to time he reminded Chang Miao that the place was wrong. Chang Miao listened carefully and changed it the next time. Is this guy a martial arts prodigy? Gao Zhou's eyes widened at the side. He was from a martial arts training background. This rough boxing technique was simple. Most people wouldn't be able to master the full set if they didn't practice it for a month or two. Not only did Chang Miao win the fight, but she was also able to change her routine from front to back at will, which made people exclaim in surprise. Su Tong ran up to his master and asked curiously. The master took a sip of tea and said, "Hey, it's fate. Take a look." The master said as he picked up a small book and handed it to Su Tong. The small book was naturally the fragment of a supreme sensation chapter passed down to Chang Miao by Taoist Zizou. This is the number of days. There is a time in life that must come, but there is no time in life. Don't force it. The master roughly explained it, and it turned out that this chapter on Tai's Hang induction and the book on the Tao of purification given to Chang Miao had the same origin, and even this fragment was superior. It's a pity that it's a fragment. A normal person would seek death if he practiced cultivation, which could range from paralysis to death. It was because of bad intentions that Taoist Zizou passed it on to Chang Miao. Fortunately, Chang Miao was very lucky. After obtaining the fragment, he was able to complete it from the beggar clan's filthy ways. During this period of practice, he had the effect of being completely transformed. Chang Miao came to see his master just now, because he didn't understand a few things, so he came to ask his master for advice. The master was shocked when he saw that his body had undergone wonderful changes, and even his destiny had been changed. He was quite surprised to learn about Taoist Zuzu after asking, so he simply explained it to him and gave him a set of basic boxing techniques. This guy really has a leading role. Su Tong looked at Chang Miao and couldn't help but sigh, this luck is simply incredible. A manure worker counterattacked like a cheat all the way. According to the direction of the script that he knew, Chang Miao must have become a top figure in the Shijulio in the end. Now because of his own changes, will Chang Miao become stronger in the future? Woolen cloth? In other words, since Chang Miao can change his destiny, can he also change his master's destiny? Su Tong was unconsciously thirsty in his wild thoughts. When he saw his master drinking the remaining tea, he was about to reach out to drink it. As soon as his hand touched the cup, his master picked up the cup unhurriedly and glanced at him from the corner of his eye. He glanced at it and said, "How can you be just talking about fate?" After saying that, he asked Ci Min to take out the prepared box and hand it to him. "Go, your friend is probably hungry too. Let's deliver it to him before dawn." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 287. The box was not big, just a small bamboo basket. Su Tong could smell a strange smell through the box. When he opened it, he saw that it was all leftover rice. There are all kinds of messy things inside, but this is not because the master is stingy. In fact, it is because the master sent Simon to go to the villages to beg for hundreds of meals from one house to another. A grain of rice and a leaf of vegetables are all taken from the villagers' bowls. When they heard that the food was prepared for the fool, the villagers immediately wanted to snatch it back and prepare a new one for the fool. However, the master specially ordered that the breakfast must be eaten by the villagers themselves and cannot be made separately. Then there are the things in the box, all kinds of food are mixed together, and when they are stuffed in the box, the taste. But since the master decided like this, he naturally had his own intentions. After Su Tong asked Gao Zhou to stay and report the information to the master, he went up the mountain with his lunch box. The last time I came here, there was a big fat man cutting a path through the grass in front, but by the time I went up the mountain, the grass had actually grown back. Fortunately, he already knew the location, so he summoned the big fat ghost mode and flashed all the way there. Until he climbed down Yingyun Ridge and walked to the entrance of the cave to take a look. Perhaps because the master broke an arm of the Buddha statue last time, the black fog in the cave actually dissipated much more than before. In fact, he originally planned to use the hanging lantern trick taught him by his master to guide the way, but now that the black fog had mostly dissipated, he could see clearly, which saved him a lot of effort. He poked his head into the hole and saw that the fool was still standing there blankly. 3 of the 12 clay sculptures guarding the Buddha statue in front of him had been broken. Seeing that there seemed to be signs of fighting around him, Su Tong couldn't help but become nervous and quickly took a closer look at the fool. He was relieved when he found that although the fool had a few blood marks on his body, he seemed to be fine. Fool. He tried calling him a fool, but as expected, he remained unmoved and aloof. Seeing this, Su Tong called out 2 paper figures and controlled them to deliver the food to the fool. After the box was opened and a smell filled the air from inside, the fool's dull face finally moved. He held the bowl and stuffed the rice soup into his mouth. The sound of eating was slurping, and those who didn't know thought he was eating some delicacy. After the fool finished eating the food in the bowl, he suddenly became energetic. He turned his head and the green-faced, fanged face suddenly regained his clarity for a short time. He looked at Su Tong and grinned at him, revealing his long-lost smile. Stupid laugh. Fool. Seeing that the fool actually woke up, Su Tong immediately crawled forward a few times and stretched out his hand. Quick, come up and I will take you away. However, the fool who always listened to his words actually shook his head at him today. Even though Su Tong's words were almost worn out, he still stood there and refused to leave. Hey, what are you doing here? What does the sky falling have to do with you? Su Tong was a little annoyed. There were so many masters in the world. As far as he knew, besides his own master, there was also Shu Mingqing, the old monk from White Horse Temple, who was the top master in the world. Looking further afield, there are so many Shaolin Zhongzong, Quanzhen, Long Hushan, Mishan, etc. Su Tong does not believe that there are only a few powerful people among them. Of course, if the sky falls, it will be because of the big guys like them. You are a fool. Why should you suffer this? Is it wrong to live a selfish life? Idiot, be obedient and I will take you home. The fool was still giggling, but the man took a step back and waved his hand towards him. Don't. When he finished speaking, he saw a black mist appear on the fool's face, and in a moment it turned into that green-faced, fanged face. His red eyes were ruthless and ruthless. Apart from the stone statues in front of him, he could see nothing else. Something else. Grass. Su Tong was so angry that he cursed and punched the ground hard. He could only make the paper man take back the lunch box, look back at the fool, and then turned around and left with a depressed look. He walked slowly along the way, still thinking about the fool. The more I think about it, the more uncomfortable I feel. He is just a fool. Why should a fool be responsible for so many injustices in the world? Could it be that the so-called kindness is just coming to this world to suffer? Thinking of this, many images suddenly appeared in Su Tong's mind uncontrollably. For example, in the news, a female student helped an old man who fell. The old man framed her as the one who knocked her down. He asked for 500,000 yuan as soon as he opened his mouth. In the end, he forced the female student to suicide. Or on the highway, faced with an unscrupulous driver who chose to brake suddenly because he missed the intersection, the large truck behind him chose to swerve and brake suddenly, sparing the other driver's life and causing his own vehicle to be destroyed. And the other party only paid 6 points and 2,000 yuan afterwards? Or diving into the water to save someone. After rescuing the person, he sacrificed himself, but the other party didn't even show his face afterwards. When he came to the door, he said that I asked him to save it. It was he who insisted on saving me. Various images kept reappearing in his mind as if watching a lantern. Killing people and setting fires with gold belts, repairing bridges and repairing roads, but no corpses. Could it be said that the future of a new era is less worthy of reflection than the dross of karma in the latter? Su Tong was confused, and there seemed to be a voice in his ear laughing and teasing him, although the future is bright, people have no awe. If you tell them that there is a God with your head 3 feet high, they will only laugh at you for having no power behind your back. You shouted for retribution, but the other party is already sitting on tens of millions of wealth and has never cared about your life or death. I don't see the light in your memory, I only see the bottom line of morality being refreshed again and again. Following the sound, real-life scenes continued to appear in front of Su Tong's eyes. They shorted the stock market to cash in and made money, set up fake people to provide disaster relief, secretly and abducted people abroad, and started selling fake wine in the name of so-called artists. When have these people ever received retribution? These things happen one after another, and anyone who sees them will feel nameless anger. The figure next to his ear became more and more ethereal, and Su Tong's eyes gradually became colder, as if there was an evil fire in his eyes. It was obviously broad daylight and the sun was hot, but Su Tong's body exuded a dark evil aura. Master, are we just going to watch like this? Not far away, Gao Zhou and his party were standing behind Master Shuigui. When he saw Su Tong's face becoming more and more distorted, as if he was possessed by a demon, Gao Zhou couldn't help but start to worry. The master didn't speak, just looked sideways at the sky in front of him. There was a ray of blue light flashing in his eyes, and then with this ray of blue light, he could see a black shadow with a broken arm covering the earth on Mang Mountain. At this moment, the big hand was covering Su Tong's head, and dark ropes were hanging down from her palm, wrapping around Su Tong's body layer after layer. Hearing Gao Zhou's inquiry, Shuigui just frowned. "Let's go." Gao Zhou's eyes lit up and he was about to move forward, but master pulled him back with one hand and pointed down the mountain. "Go down the mountain." "Ah! This." Gao Zhou was confused. He looked back at Su Tong and then at the old man in front of him. "Old man, don't care about this?" Not to mention Gao Zhou Meng, even Ci Min was confused. "Wasn't it a thigh? Why can't my thighs be saved?" The master didn't care about this and led the two of them down the mountain. It wasn't until he was halfway up the slope that he looked back at Su Tong, his black and white eyes shining with a hint of expectation. Some people have good intentions, but end up falling into the devil's path and will never be reincarnated. Some people have bad intentions, but they can transcend and become the Buddha's angry Ivajra. If he wants to take this path and cannot distinguish between right and wrong, good and evil, he will not be able to escape his fate in the end. Let him go. The master's words were so high-end that even after the two of them listened, they seemed not to have listened. No matter what is good or evil, for players like them, the mission is the most important. They can just kill whoever the mission asks them to do. There is no moral baggage at all. Gao Zhou probably understood something in his heart, but after thinking about it, he felt that there was no need to ponder these philosophical issues. The two of them didn't understand. Only Master Shuigui knew best. Since he chose the yin industry, he has one foot in the coffin. If he can't pass the hurdle in his heart, he will definitely be eliminated in the end. This is what he has given Su. This is Tong's last test, no matter whether this boy is really his disciple or not. After the three of them went down the mountain, Su Tong stood there, with a sneer on his face for a while, and after a while his eyes turned red as if he wanted to eat someone. All kinds of negativity exploded crazily in his heart, almost swallowing up his consciousness. He wanted to deny these voices, but as soon as the thought arose, countless images flooded into his mind, leaving him feeling speechless. The black mist invisible to the naked eye was getting stronger and stronger, as if it was going to penetrate into his flesh and blood, corroding him from the inside out. At this time, the black figure with a broken arm in the air suddenly paused and slowly cast a surprised look at Su Tong. He found that a dark blue fire started to pour out of the boy's body, and the weak fire turned out to be, "Resist your own strength." As darkness surged, the cold corridor suddenly appeared in front of Su Tong's eyes. There are still old iron doors in the corridor, and various strange torture instruments are hung on the walls. That helpless wailing sound seemed to be the main theme here. He had been here before, and it was the scene that appeared when the demon power awakening skill was activated. Su Tong didn't know how he suddenly appeared in this place again. But when the wailing sound came and the moist smell poured into his nose, he felt a lot cleaner. There was no longer the weird whisper in his ears, which gave him more time to sort out his thoughts. Buzz. At this moment, the door at the end of the corridor was slowly opened, and a burst of music came from behind the door. When he stepped into the door, a figure who looked exactly like him was sitting in front of a piano. His slender fingers seemed to be dancing butterflies, dancing quickly on the keys. Until the last note fell, a gust of breeze swept in, rolling up countless gorgeous petals and flying around the piano. The figure in front of the piano slowly stood up and put his hands in the air like Su Tong, as if holding a flower on his fingertips. He gently held the finger flower and placed it flat on his chest. After bowing deeply, he raised his head. An elegant and calm smile appeared on his thin face and he said, "Do you need help, My host. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 288. Oh, what a familiar scene. Su Tong almost wondered if he was looking in the mirror. If it's free, I think it's acceptable. Su Tong looked playful and smiling, as if he didn't care about the devil in front of him. He even strolled to the piano and started playing the piano briskly. You can call me Mr. Fei. The man in front of him raised a smile. You don't seem to be worried at all. Seeing that Su Tong could still hold his breath like this, Jun was a little surprised. He didn't know when a glass of red wine appeared in his hand. He held the wine glass with his fingers and started shaking it. The blood-like red wine began to emit an attractive fruity flavor as it shook. Fragrance. But he didn't drink it, he just put it on the tip of his nose and smelled the volatile fruity aroma. What's there to worry about? You don't like sharing happiness with others, and I happen to be the same. The light piano sound echoed in the sea of flowers. Su Tong closed his eyes as if he was enjoying his leisure time here, but this sentence was full of temptation. After hearing this, Jun did not answer any questions and continued, after our last meeting, I feel that we actually have a lot to talk about. Last time, Su Tong scratched his head and pretended to be dumbfounded. You weren't so enthusiastic last time. The last time I came here, this guy was cold and arrogant, as if he owed him 5 million. Today's attitude changed drastically, and Su Tong had to think carefully about the reason. After all, there is no love without reason, and there is no hatred without reason. The most likely thing is that if he is controlled, Mr. Yu will feel threatened. Seeing this guy's desperate look, Mr. Hui frowned unconsciously. I can help you for free, but you have to agree to one condition. Su Tong stopped his fingers, tilted his head and looked at Mr. Fei, narrowed his eyes and grinned at Mr. Fei, but why do I feel that you are more anxious than me? Jun turned his back to Su Tong. I just want to help you. If you don't need it, just pretend I didn't say this. After saying that, he stared at the red wine in the glass, silently waiting for Su Tong's answer. As a result, the time passed by and the expected answer never came. When he looked back in confusion, he found that Su Tong had already left. This guy is really. Looking at the empty chair behind him, Jun curled his lips with a disapproving look on his face, as if he didn't care too much about Su Tong's rejection. He just glanced at the piano aside, and with a wave of his hand, the piano immediately turned into ashes, and even the sea of flowers in front of him withered, revealing blood-red soil. If you look closely, you will find countless skeletons buried in the soil. Even the glass of red wine in my hand began to smell like blood. Su Tong left and didn't even listen to Mr. Hui's conditions. Countless cases in reality tell people that free things are often the most expensive. Su Tong didn't know what Mr. Jun wanted to do, but he always felt that as long as he agreed to his conditions, the price he paid would definitely make him regret it. When his vision became clear again, the vague flame on his body also disappeared. The majestic shadow in midair had twinkling eyes. More black mist surged out of his palm, trying to take advantage of the opportunity to engulf this human being faster. But at this time, she was surprised to find that the flames on Su Tong's body disappeared, but his consciousness became more clear. A layer of faint fluorescence enveloped him. Although the black mist could ignore this layer of fluorescence and continue to pour into this guy's body, it could hardly affect his consciousness. The title skill, Retributor, is immune to 80% of mental damage. Although he was not completely immune, his ears were still filled with demonic and strange sounds, but this could no longer affect him. Su Tong raised his head, but he couldn't see the terrifying shadow. But that didn't stop him from feeling that intense gaze staring at him. Headmaster, let me lend you a pair of eyes to help you. At this time, De Ya's voice suddenly came to his ears. Su Tong felt something pushed him behind his body, and his eyes suddenly glowed with green light. He looked up and heard, "Oh, What a big black shadow. Huh. Why can't I see the bottom of my skirt? When Su Tong was confused, Dia continued, Headmaster, she is not a true god, she is just a shell. As long as you keep your mind, you will not be affected by her. It is rare for Dia to be so kind, and there is nothing he can do about it. After all, Su Tong is the headmaster, and the entrance to the hall is on him. If the headmaster dies, the immortals who have settled in the hall will not end well either. In fact, she was also shocked. She didn't expect that there was such a god on Buman Mountain. When she took a closer look, she found out that it was the god of 5 era. What are the 5 misfortunes? Killing, stealing, sexual immorality, lying, and drinking alcohol. One of the 5 is plagued by misfortune. Buddhists regard this as the 5 poisons precepts and should not be violated lightly. Li 11 had also heard about Yang Simon's case. When he heard about Yang Simon's case, he was so happy that he slapped his thighs. Good guy, a small and inconspicuous village could actually cultivate 4 people, Guo Jinhua and others, who are capable of stealing, adultery, delusion, and so on. It is really rare that the 4 poisons of wine take over. It was Tian whose start. What else can I say? He secretly bewitched Zhang Yang, a Buddhist idiot, to kill 4 of them, and by the way, he also collected the poison of killing. Only then did we have the 5 gods of disaster in front of us. But after all, it is the age of ending Dharma, and this is just a body, not a real god. With Dia's words, Su Tong felt more confident. He spread his hands and said, That's it? That's it? You still have something to do. If it's okay, I'll go home for dinner. The huge and majestic god shrouded in mid-air, as if he could dominate all living beings with ease. Even if one of his arms was broken, his majesty could not be damaged. However, the majestic god was actually despised by an ordinary person? The future is not bright. You already have the answer in your memory. Why are you so stubborn? There was no sound, but what was said came directly into his mind. Su Tong shook his head, It's too small. The pattern is too small. He raised his head and looked at the huge and majestic figure above his head. If you really have spirits, why don't you come out when foreign enemies invade? Gods do not interfere in the mortal world. The voice was solemn and majestic, as if it was an iron law. Just as her voice fell, she heard Su Tong add the next sentence for her, But you can fool the people, right? Presumptuous. A thunderbolt sounded on Bamang Mountain in broad daylight, followed by a strong wind. The originally bright day suddenly turned dark and cloudy, as if a sudden heavy rain was about to arrive. Under another mound in Bamang, a group of people were sitting down to bask in the sun. Seeing the sudden change in the sky, they immediately screamed, Why is it going to rain? Third brother, hurry up and set up a tent. Zhang San was busy looking at the tomb. When he looked back, he saw that the clouds were already gathering and he hurriedly started to set up the tent. The thin man with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks on the side couldn't help complaining, Third brother, can't we just find a grave at random? There is nothing else on Bamang Mountain. Just shovel down and there will be a grave. Why go to such a remote place? Zhang San set up the tent while cursing, Monkey, you are also an old man in our industry. What are you thinking about? After speaking, he pointed to the ravine in front of him. I just looked at it. The ravine just now is very deep. There must be old pits below. The imitations we have are all Tang Dynasty styles. Why do you want to find a Tang Dynasty old man? It's just a trap, otherwise people with a discerning eye would see the problem at a glance, and it would be a fool's errand. The monkey was stunned when he heard the words, thinking about the same truth, but he couldn't help but feel a little unconvinced, and couldn't help but muttered, they may not be able to see it, right? Upon hearing this, Zhang San's face turned half dark. I say you are stupid, but you are really stupid. Do you think those wealthy businessmen are fools? How can people get rich if they are all like you? The monkey was scolded so hard that he couldn't even lift his head, which made everyone burst into laughter. Now the monkey's face turned red with shame, and he kept shouting that he was wrong, 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 wrong. A flash of resentment flashed through him. When Zhang San saw the monkey admitting his mistake, his face suddenly turned red. He raised his head and continued to preach to everyone. You must have an attitude in everything you do. We must keep pace with the times. Do you understand? I heard that there is something popular in Hong Kong. What, Sister Feng, every service is a full set of flowers. It's too much, it's more expensive, and customers are willing to spend it, so we have to make a complete set, focus on quality, and ensure service, so that we can make a lot of money. Zhang San simply began to summarize them. Their important service duty is to let the guests experience the excitement of tomb robbing, and to ensure the safety of the guests. The sense of mystery is full. Even if they later find out that what they bought is a fake, they will still be disappointed. It's time to experience life. If you really encounter a quarrelsome fool, this will also make it easier for them to quarrel. In the future, they will hang a travel company brand. If anyone comes to you, they will say that they provide travel services and they will not refund any money. The more he talked, the more he talked. He felt like his mind was full of ideas, and ideas for making money were popping up one after another. Brother, you know so much. We brothers will definitely get rich by following you, and our days will be more and more promising. When the time comes, you can find me a wife. A young man looked at Zhang San with admiration. Zhang San enjoyed this look and raised his nose. Hit. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 289. Putting aside the incident involving Zhang San and his group, Su Tong looked at the dark clouds above his head and could vaguely see a vague outline in the air. Not only was he not afraid when he saw this, he continued to raise his head and said, "What you care about is not the people at all, but the incense and class. Whether it will affect your existence, you are afraid. You are afraid that the people will have faith, and you are afraid that the country will become strong. When everyone can know that the theories about ghosts and gods are all illusory, and when people no longer regard ignorance as the mainstream, then you scumbags will have no future." As Su Tong spoke, the angry images in his mind were swept away, and his eyes became clearer. The picture in my mind also began to change. It was a piece of news. Under the distant and icy Mount Everest, a group of lovely people were holding steel guns and standing on the border despite the wind and snow. When the flood broke out, people did not pray to the so-called gods for blessing, because in front of them, there was a dam built by flesh and blood. When the epidemic breaks out, the temple doors are closed, and a group of angels in white swim upstream. There are too many pictures that make the sneaky whispers in my ears obediently shut up. Su Tong's black and white eyes silently watched these pictures, but his mind became calmer and he turned back to look in the direction of the fool. They may be unknown, but this does not affect the kindness in their hearts or even the mission on their shoulders. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked up at the figure in the sky. A dregs like you only deserve to be reduced to dust and disappear in the long river of history. Furious. There was a muffled sound in the sky, and Haiying just opened his big hands, trying to inject more black mist into this mortal's body. She didn't believe how much his own strength could be endured by a guy with a mortal body. Erosion. Headmaster. Run, this thing is angry. The voice of Dia came to Su Tong's ears, and it seemed that even she had not expected that the headmaster's words had angered the god, and even wanted to deal with him at all costs. Even if it is the shell of a god, it is still a god. Although it is an illusory product, it still has terrifying divine power. I saw the black cloud falling from her palm, and the billowing black cloud poured into Su Tong's body like a tide. Su Tong's face became more and more ugly, and his brows were tightly knitted together, as if he was constantly enduring the erosion of the darkness. Every face turned pale. The black clouds are full of the 5 poisons mentioned earlier: killing, stealing, sexual immorality, lying, and drinking alcohol. Those who kill living beings should suffer punishment and disaster. Disasters will come upon them, and they will be cut into pieces by 1,000 swords. Those who steal will be in trouble, their limbs will be damaged, and the wood will rot. Those who engage in sexual immorality will suffer from bad luck, physical decline, mental fading, and the loss of descendants. Those who lie will be in danger of bloodshed, and misfortunes will come from their mouths, affecting all 9 clans. Drinkers should experience internal pain, incomplete internal organs, and a bad death. The 5 poisons of misfortune gathered into a ball of dark power and penetrated Su Tong's body like a curse. They not only corroded his soul, but also tortured him to the point of death. Beg for mercy. The shadow slowly raised her hand, as if she didn't want to kill this human being. She could vaguely feel that there seemed to be something very precious on this human being, and it was even difficult for her to figure out what it was. She only felt that this thing seemed it's very important, even more important than the fairy treasure. No. Su Tong clutched his chest. The corners of his lips had been bitten and blood was dripping from them, but his eyes were still glaring at the sky like torches. Then be swallowed up by the darkness and become my puppet. Seeing that he was stubborn, the slightly drooped eyes in the shadow slowly opened. He lowered his hand, and a large amount of dark aura leaked out of his palm like a waterfall. Su Tong swayed and he was lying on the ground, without even a finger. They couldn't move. Waves of wailing screams came out of his mouth, but the strange thing was that the screams became more and more miserable, but the man did not change at all. No, strictly speaking, there were changes. For example, his skin became more delicate and smooth, and his hair grew like crazy. In the blink of an eye, his head was full of black hair. Gradually, this god began to realize that something was wrong. I have been doing this for a long time, and you screamed so loudly, but I didn't see anything wrong with you. If it had been anyone else, they would have been finished by now, right? Not to mention that she was strange. Dia, who was standing at the entrance of the hall, couldn't help but stare at her head teacher with wide eyes. He began to murmur in his heart, this 5 god of evil is also called the 5 poison god. In my impression, he is a demon god. Even if there is only a shell in front of him now, he is still a god after all. He is so desperate to attack with all his strength, and the master's body is why is the aura not only not weak, but getting stronger. As Dia said, Su Tong screamed miserably, but there was really nothing wrong with it. Instead, he was in pain and happy. I saw that after the black mist penetrated into the body, it was quickly absorbed by my own body. This is naturally attributed to the active skill of dark physique, heart of the abyss. As the only active skill of dark physique, This skill did not disappoint him, and it was worthy of its special name, Heart of the Abyss. Heart of the Abyss consumes 20 script points to swallow all the dark power in the body. Each time it is swallowed, the dark constitution will be increased by 1 level. After Su Tong activated the Heart of the Abyss, the dark power in his body was instantly swallowed up, and it was swallowed up continuously. My dark physique dropped 1 level before, but now it has improved again and returned to LV2 level. And now it has broken through to LV3 level, and there is even a feeling that it will continue to break through. At this time, his screams became more and more cruel and heart-rending. It made the listeners sad and the listeners weeping, but in their hearts they were shouting, "More, please, there is not enough to eat." Finally, when Su Tong was about to break through LV4, the belated 5 gods finally realized something was wrong and hurriedly wanted to take back his power. When Su Tong saw this, his eyes widened. "Don't run away, let me take another sip." As he spoke, his eyes glowed with green light, and with the help of Daya's power, he could clearly see the giant palm that the 5-era god was about to retract. He jumped up, his body suddenly jumped into the air, and rushed forward to meet the raised big hand. Seeing that this guy was actually addicted to it, the 5-era gods were shocked and hurriedly tried to take back the remaining power in the air. But how could Su Tong let her get her wish? She was just 1 step away. If she couldn't catch up, she didn't know how long she would have to wait for the next trip. "Bring it to you." He opened his hands, activated the extreme flame turbine, and a stream of air swirled rapidly in his palms, erupting with terrifying suction force, and actually snatched the black mist back from the hands of the 5 gods of Era. "Master, teach me about urine." Daya and the other 3 stood at the entrance of the hall and watched. Seeing that the headmaster dared to snatch it from the hands of the gods, and actually won, they couldn't help but shout wildly. If this were done to them, they wouldn't even dare to think about it. The 5 gods of Era can't do anything to the leader, but they can be severely injured with just 1 slap. The god of 5 evils was also stunned for a moment. He thought that the damn village guard in the cave where he was hiding was already fierce enough, but he didn't expect that there was actually a braver one here who dared to take things from his hands. After the shock, there was naturally a burst of angry rage. Seeing Su Tong take away his power, the 5 gods were so angry that they couldn't stop, and slapped Su Tong with his backhand. But just at this time, Su Tong's dark physique finally broke through to level 4. With the breakthrough of the dark physique, Su Tong's skin actually turned a faint pink color, which actually made his sickly pale skin look a little bit, the complexion of a living person. But at this moment, his nails suddenly became as slender and sharp as those of a zombie, with sharp fangs exposed in his mouth, and a reddish light in his pupils, beating like a flame. The power of the 5 disasters has been successfully swallowed, and your prop card dark physique has been upgraded to LV4. Your dark physique increases, and the increase and reduction of passive dark body increases to 50%. Because dark physique has been upgraded to LV4, you will gain a 15% increase in overall physical fitness and a 20% increase in anti-strike ability. Note, this effect is limited to the current level of the prop card. The effect of the passive skill Night God Caress is increased to 35% skill damage and 30% cooldown. You have acquired an awakening skill, Black Tide Attack. Black Tide Attack. Spending 60 script points you can summon a black tide to cause corrosive damage to the target and devour the opponent's life force. You can use the power of the black tide to charge forward. The more lives the black tide swallows, the more powerful the temporary increase you will get. Duration, 60 seconds. Cooling time, 14 days. Note, charge, Wanderer of Darkness, and spread darkness to the entire earth. Su Tong raised his head to reveal his sharp fangs, and pushed his head with both hands. A fire blade formed by a large corrosive fire burst out, forming a black fire fan in mid-air. The skill damage has been increased by 35%, and the power of corrosive fire has become quite similar to that of number 8, with large flames burning in the air like gasoline. Although it was unable to harm the body of the 5 gods of Era, it also penetrated the void palm shadow of the 5 gods of Era. Suddenly a flat thunder flashed across the sky, and the magnificent figure in front of him suddenly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, in a forest in the eastern suburbs, a man hidden in a black robe slowly raised his head and looked unexpectedly in the direction of Bamang Mountain. "Master? What happened?" Seeing that he suddenly stopped leaving, Jing Shaocheng couldn't help but asked with confusion on his face. Li 11 ignored him, just stretched out his hand and counted several times on his fingertips, and then raised his head with an annoyed look. "Humph, that old guy broke an arm of Wu God last time, but he actually set a trigger. The evil pile cut off the source of chi of the 5 gods of Era, so that the power of the 5 Era gods was greatly damaged, and now someone actually injured another arm. It turns out that the iron nails and stakes that Master asked the White Mouse to dig in the mountains earlier were the boundary stakes used to prevent the 5 gods from absorbing Bamang's evil spirit. They had already cut off part of the source of power of the 5 gods. Otherwise, Su Tong would not be able to survive. It can be so easy. After cutting off the source of the evil spirit, the 5 gods of evil would definitely be unable to sit still, but she could not break the evil-inducing pile and could only find someone to help. Therefore, Su Tong, who went to deliver the meal, must be the best choice. But Su Tong's dark physique would probably suffer a big loss if she encountered those righteous gods. However, if she encountered evil beings like the 5 gods of disaster, they were their natural nemesis. Not only did she not get any benefits, but she lost all her money. All of this was clearly arranged by Master long ago. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 290. As the saying goes, if you are not afraid of thieves stealing, you are afraid of being missed by thieves. Not to mention you are a shell of an evil god. Even if you are a righteous god, you cannot stand up to others' schemes. What's more, it's a great master like Shuigui, a person who can see through destiny. Fortunately, the 5 gods of disaster didn't know it yet, and Shuigui had left a 3-eyed fire blunderbuss for her, otherwise she might have been thinking of running away this time. On the other side, Jing Shaocheng heard what Li 11 said and immediately looked at each other. "Master, does this have any impact on our plan?" The speaker slowly emerged from the shadows. It was the assassin who almost killed Su Tong before, Fi Hung assassin Dian. Li 11 calculated it carefully with his fingers, frowned and said, "It doesn't matter, let this old thing continue to be free for a while. Master, everything is ready now. All we need is the east wind. But I don't understand why we have to wait until tonight. Some people don't understand the practice of choosing an auspicious day for a fight. If it is delayed for one more day, most of the people on Yiren's side will lose their hearts. Especially in front of the Shangqing Palace last time, everyone witnessed Shuigui's methods. One sentence, Grand Master, established his invincible title. As the saying goes, those who master literary and martial arts will bring their goods to the emperor's family. It is not difficult for the first-class masters in the world to become a martial arts champion, enough to become an official in the court. And the Grand Master is even more special. With just these 3 words, he can enter the palace and serve as the emperor's personal bodyguard, and he can easily gain glory and wealth. If this was left to the Manchus and the Qing dynasty took a step back to open a martial arts school, the imperial court would allocate a sum of money to support martial arts, so that you could live a comfortable life. If you want to start a sect of your own, and you like that hilltop, say hello to the local prefect, and the hilltop will be erected for you immediately. Why, there is no other way. In the era of cold weapons, this kind of great master appears and disappears. His ability to kill is shown to you in various ways, and the performance cannot be completed in one day. If you don't take good care of him, he will be in a bad mood one day and feel that I am not living a good life. If I come into the palace to assassinate the king, the emperor will not be able to live well. Of course, these are just jokes among ordinary people. It is really not that easy to assassinate the king and kill him. But the meaning is not bad anyway. This shows the weight of the three words Grand Master, not to mention that it is already the end of the Dharma era. Not to mention the Great Master, any second-rate master in the world can come out and escape in one big wave. The three religions don't even dare to risk their lives, and many industries are about to be wiped out. In this era, a great master suddenly appeared. Who could be interested in him? After all, rushing forward would mean death. Didn't you see that the 5-inch monk was kicked into a ball? After this incident, no matter how Jian Shu tried to comfort him, even if Jing Shaocheng took out the token of Qin Tianjian, it would be difficult to restore the hearts of those who were about to disperse. There were obviously so many opportunities to take action, but they had to delay it until now. It is said that some of the strangers couldn't wait and left in a hurry. In the eyes of these players, the key is to find ways to get rid of Shuigoi's stumbling block at this time, but Li 11 suppressed them and did not allow them to make any rash moves. Li 11 glanced at them and said with a sneer, "You don't understand, destiny is not waiting for us, and it will be in vain if we do it." Destiny. On the side, Jing Shaocheng frowned. He was a certified player. He still had some awareness of the destiny mentioned by Li 11, but he didn't know much. His initial understanding was that the so-called destiny was just the direction of the script, and he could forcefully change the direction. Will cause a repulsive effect. But later, after learning more about it, he discovered that the theory of destiny was not as simple as he thought, and there seemed to be some secrets hidden in it. Seeing their confused expressions, Li 11 explained, "The theory of fate may seem illusory, but it actually has extraordinary effects. In ancient times, there was the war between Yan and Huang; in the Middle Ages, there was the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms; in the later, there was the 9 dragons seizing the sun, etc. There are too many fates involved behind this. The 10,000 Years Song, the Showbiz Song, the Makian Lesson, the Plum Blossom Poems, and the Tui Bei diagram all illustrate the destiny of heaven. However, no authentic copy has ever been handed down. Who dares to say that there is no master in this world? Being benevolent and righteous will establish the world, and I will only count the end of 10,000 years." These words come from Zhang Zia's 10,000 Years Song. Others don't know it, but Li 11, who was born in Qin Tianjian, knows it. Speaking of fate, Li 11 sighed with emotion. Back then, someone in the Kintian prison had already discovered the signs of the country's subjugation, but the court at that time was headed by Lafayette, and the court was full of murderous intent. Who dared to speak nonsense? At that time, Kintian supervisor Zhenfo Anning took the initiative to resign and return to his hometown in order to avoid the disaster of his own death. However, the bad news came that he was intercepted and killed on the way. Who was intercepted and killed? The government said they were a group of bandits, but you can understand with your toes that bandits would not dare to take action on official roads even if they had the guts of a leopard. This was equivalent to the crime of rebellion, and no group of green foresters had the guts to do so. So everyone knows who did it, but who dares to say? However, as far as he knew, Fu Anning was not dead, but had traveled across the ocean early, and those who were intercepted and killed were his family members in a car. She would rather abandon her family and children than escape from China. You can imagine how many secrets Fu Anning mastered in Kintian prison. After Li 11 finished speaking, he suddenly realized that he had gone too far. He couldn't help but stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Haha, I'm going too far." As people get older, they always like to talk about the past. Let's get back to the point. Tonight, the moon is rising for the 4th time. The Suxing, Zhenxing, and Yinghuo have all entered Taiwei. Yinghuo has taken advantage of the situation to rise. That's right. It is a rare situation where the destiny of that old man will be deceived. Without the blessing of destiny, even if he is a great master, he will not be able to escape death. After speaking, Li 11 slowly stood up and looked up at the sky in the direction of the Shangqing Palace. Even though they were so far apart, he could still see the light of destiny breaking through the sky and falling vertically like a galaxy. But if you look closely, this light has already started to get darker. I'm back. At night, Su Tong walked back to Shangqing Palace. Why is it night? Because the sun is shining during the day, it is really uncomfortable. All prop cards cannot escape the truth of equivalent exchange. After raising his dark physique to level 4, his strength greatly increased at night and in dark places, but during the day his strength was greatly reduced. When the sun shines on my skin, the skin and flesh on my body feel an indescribable pain, as if there are ants crawling under the skin, and it is painfully itchy. So he could only temporarily find a place to lie under the shade of a tree and wait for the sun to set before wandering down the mountain, so he didn't come back until this point. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Master and Ci Min playing chess. Chang Miao was sitting beside him holding an oil lamp, and Gao Zhou was sitting under the oil lamp and sewing a robe. The scene was harmonious. Seeing him coming back, the master took a look, and the smile on his face grew. The harvest is good. Huh. Su Tong was stunned, and when he saw the smile on his master's face, an idea came to his mind. He bared his teeth and smiled, "You are really my grandfather, but next time you keep playing this trick, please say hello in advance." That won't be fun. It was rare for master to be naughty, and he immediately glanced at Gao Zhou. "Okay." Gao Zhou nodded and said, "Hurry up." The 2 silver needles in his hands were flying up and down. This technique of controlling corpses was used by Gao Zhou to sew clothes. The effect was surprisingly good. All machines are good. Not long after, Gao Zhou threw a dark robe to Su Tong, wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Hurry up and kowtow to the old man. This is the leather that the old man specially prepared for you. Wear it." Gao Zhou's sour tone was like that of a disgraced eldest daughter-in-law, with just the word jealousy written on her face. Su Tong took it and took a look. He found that the leather was shiny and black, and it was also very light. He threw it into the prop book and took a look at the entry. It doesn't matter if you don't look at it. When you see Su Tong, you will kneel down to the master on the spot. Black Biao brocade robe, producer, XXX. Among the 3 tigers, there must be 1 tiger. With a roar, when it takes hold of the ground, the rocks will crack, and the evil energy will be like a rainbow. It will kill its mother, eat its limbs, and become an uncrowned king. Passive skill 1, resentful evil body protection. The wearer will be protected by a layer of invisible evil energy, which can resist the invasion of water and fire. In the state of protection by evil energy, the wearer will no longer be affected by the outside weather, but he will no longer be able to feel any changes in external temperature. For those with no special physique, please carefully consider whether you will be affected by evil spirits. Passive skill 2, Uncrowned King. The wearer's aura will be hidden and cannot be captured by any tracking techniques or calculated by ordinary arithmetic. Note, the world will leave behind your legend, but it will never leave your name. Seeing this leather robe, Su Tong felt warm in his heart. His master really cared about him. He not only arranged a training session, but also thoughtfully prepared this robe for him. Where did this leather come from? Of course, it is impossible for the master to go into the mountains to catch tigers. Tigers are so rare, not to mention that there are no tigers in the mountains and forests around L City. So one should know at a glance that master must have put a lot of thought into this. No wonder Gao Zhou on the side was so sour that he almost turned into lemon essence on the spot. Sure enough, when Su Tong asked next, the master just said in an understatement, "Oh, when I came back, I saw a farmer raising that beast like a dog. If I don't kill the beast, it won't take long for the beast to wait. If you look good enough, this farmer will no longer be able to survive, so just treat it as a favor." The master didn't lie to him. There was indeed a farmer who saw a little black thing in the field when he was farming, which looked like a dog but not like it, so he took it back and raised it. Little did the farmers know that this thing was the legendary Biao. No matter how good you are at it, it will be of no use if you don't raise it well. Once it grows up and breaks away from the iron rope, it will definitely eat the entire farmer's family. If the master hadn't heard the roar of this thing in the distance on the way back, any farmer would have been in trouble. Master said it in an understatement, but is it really like this? If you don't pretend to be yourself, why would you go out of your way to meddle in other people's business? The master saw him happily wearing his robe, and the smile on his face grew stronger. He was about to say something, but when he opened his mouth, a sweet taste suddenly appeared in his throat, and he spit out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the bright red blood on the ground, the silly smile on Su Tong's face froze. No one expected that the invincible master would suddenly be seriously injured. "Master! Old man!" Su Tong and Gao Zhou saw the old man crumbling and rushed forward. When Su Tong's hand touched the old man, his heart skipped a beat. He felt that the old man's hand was frighteningly cold. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 291. Master. Seeing the master's face as golden as paper, Su Tong and the others were really frightened. They felt that the master's hands were as cold as ice cubes. They quickly took out the Lingru blood-reviving pill that Sci-Min had brewed before and wanted to give it to him. "Master, feed it." However, the master just waved his hand. "No, this thing is useless, the poison has already penetrated into the heart." "Poison?" Su Tong's pupils tightened, and he suddenly raised his head to look at Simon, only to find that the Simon people had already taken advantage of the chaos and fled away. While running, he yelled, "Don't blame me, the contract is very clear. We are not allowed to hurt each other, but I can't hurt others if it's not written." Your uncle's contract." Su Tong's eyes turned red, and he jumped out. He now has a LV4 dark physique. Not only does he have a darkness bonus at night, but he also has a qualitative leap in his overall physique. His strength is much higher than before. In a blink of an eye, the man had already arrived behind Sci-Min, with murderous intent in his eyes, which frightened Sci-Min so much that he almost knelt on the ground. But he knew that if he was a little slow at this time, he would be dead, so he immediately did a backflip. He fought hard and was punched by Su Tong, and he knocked open the door on his back and rolled out. "If you want to run away, bring out the antidote." Su Tong chased after him, but as soon as he walked out of the door, a black shadow flashed in front of him. It was not a living person, but a puppet. The puppet flew towards Su Tong with two knives. Su Tong recognized it at a glance. This was Kinju's puppet technique. At other times, he might have done it in a roundabout way, but now he was not in that mood. Dark blue fire suddenly erupted from his body, and the flames turned into black on his body. The terrifying magic flames turned dark red with the appearance of the armor. Demon had arrived. The fire skill level is increased by 2 levels. Coupled with the terrifying 35% skill increase of the Dark Constitution, the power has been earth-shaking. With a slap, the terrifying magic flame will instantly burn the puppet to ashes. He ran straight towards Sci-Min himself without slowing down at all. Me. Save me." Seeing Su Tong, who seemed to be possessed by the devil, Sci-Min was completely stunned, his head was buzzing, and he rolled and crawled back. Fortunately, when Qian Shao took action, someone was already rushing toward him. A long black stick came across the air. The stick's head had already bent under the squeeze of the air, and it was pulled down with the rapid sound of breaking wind. Su Tong frowned and recognized the person as the young man beside Jianshu, Han Zhonglong. As soon as he waved his hand, he saw the big fat man appear out of thin air in front of him. He quickly transformed into paper armor form, and his dense tentacles blocked the long stick. Snap, snap, snap. As soon as these tentacles came into contact with the long stick, they were instantly shattered into countless pieces of paper. When the stick body shook, stick shadows popped up all over the sky, as if they were going to smash the big fat man in front of him. But at this moment, the big fat figure suddenly disappeared and was recalled by Su Tong, causing countless stick shadows to hit the air. The hand that had been burning with the terrifying demonic flame took the opportunity to grab it and aimed at the empty space in front of Han Jianglong's chest. Put the shot up. So fast. Han Jianglong's pupils tightened. He had no idea that Zhao Guangshen's strength had improved so much in such a short period of time. With such domineering evil fire, he was afraid that he would be able to rank among the first-class masters in the world. Seeing that he was unable to resist, he was still in mid-air with nowhere to exert his strength. Others could only watch and wait for death, but Han Zhonglong was trained by Jianshu from a young age. At the critical moment, he twisted his waist, made a pirouette in the air, and used a move along turned around and narrowly avoided Su Tong's killing blow. But as soon as he hid, Sci-Min was exposed behind him. Su Tong's target was not Han Zhonglong in the first place, and when he saw this, he grabbed Sci-Min with great power. Help, help. The Simon people had no time to run away, thinking, damn it, I knew I shouldn't have accepted such a crazy mission. It was too late for Simon to regret now. As he watched Su Tong come to kill him, he could only pray that the protection effect of the contract would take effect immediately. Buzz. Fortunately, although his prayer had no effect, Su Tong had to retract his hand because a dagger was stuck on his back and stabbed down. Flying Rainbow Strike can only be activated when the distance between the target and itself reaches 1 meter. After activation, a Flying Rainbow Strike will be launched, which has 30% armor penetration, serious injury, and disabling effects. That familiar murderous aura made Su Tong aware of the dangerous aura. But this time the opponent's plan will fail, because Dean may never have imagined that he would never have this opportunity again if he didn't risk his life to kill Su Tong last time. Because Su Tong is not fighting alone now. There is a Tang Kao standing in the void behind him, staring at him, especially Da Ya's green eyes, which have been staring at Dean's sneaky figure early in the morning. The moment the dagger struck, Su Tong already had a response in his mind. He slammed his hands down on the ground, and the magic armor on his body exploded. Not good. Facing the terrifying demonic flames, Dean's face showed a look of horror. He never expected that Su Tong had discovered him. The so-called assassin's way involves death and life. Life and death can often be determined at the moment of taking action. Once someone detects his whereabouts in advance, taking action again will mean death. Dean's ability to be among the top 20 masters among certified players relies on his sneaky and silent movements and the indestructible Flying Rainbow Strike. The extreme method made him achieve his achievements, and also destined his death. Faced with the sudden influx of demonic flames, Dean instinctively wanted to escape, but they were too close. Before a thought flashed through his mind, the flames had already hit him hard. The magic flame with the advent of the devil and the bonus of dark constitution is so powerful. With just a moment of contact, Dean's body instantly turned into a fireball and flew backwards. Ah! Under the scream, Dean frantically tore the clothes on his body, but the domineering power of the demon was beyond everyone's expectations. When the clothes were torn off, the flames attached to his body and continued to burn. During the burning process, the overwhelming luck triggered the passive effect of Ember. Passive skill 2, Yin. When the target is damaged, there is a 10% chance of triggering Bonefire. Note, Bone-attached fire is not a special item and cannot be dispelled. It will continuously burn the opponent's flesh and blood, making the wound unable to heal and worsening over time. For a moment, Dean could even hear his own skin and flesh exploding like firewood as it carbonized. Hiss. Ci-Men stared blankly at Dean, who was being burned into charcoal. His face turned blue. He kicked his feet back unconsciously. Suddenly he felt his shoulders sink. When he turned around, he saw that Jian Hand and the others had no idea what was going on. Time stood behind him. Seeing Jianshu and others coming, Ci-Men breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly hugged Jianshu's thigh. I succeeded, Shuigui has been poisoned by my 1,000 machines cold poison, and he can't live without death. Far. A group of people behind Jianshu were also summoned by him in a hurry. As soon as they arrived, they saw Ci-Men rushing out from inside and Su Tong chasing after him. Just when they were still shocked by the astonishing power of Zhao Guangshen's terrifying demonic flames, they suddenly froze in place after hearing Ci-Men's words. Immediately, several old people closed their eyes and watched. Through the gate of Shangqing Palace, they saw Shuigui, whose face was as golden as paper, lying on the ground vomiting blood. In the darkness, Li 11 also walked out, looked sideways, and found that the last light of destiny on Shuigui's body began to dim and was about to be extinguished. Ha ha ha, the sky is about to change. The days are almost over, and no one can stop me from waiting. Seeing that the light of destiny was about to extinguish, Li 11 laughed wildly, and immediately cast an affirmative look at Ci-Men. Very good, you did very well. When we open the Yin and Yang Dao, your merits will be indispensable. Even though Li 11 deliberately lowered his voice, the uncontrollable joy made his voice tremble. Ci-Men nodded frantically, but he kept hiding behind him. He knew very well how desperate the madman Su Tong was when he went crazy. If he wanted to take revenge on him without hesitation, he might not be able to escape death either. Moreover, his mission has been completed. Staying here to watch the excitement will only increase the variables. It is better to hide as far away as possible and wait until everything is settled before he comes forward. Su Tong looked at Ci-Men's figure coldly and did not pursue him any further. Instead, he walked to Dean's body unhurriedly and reached out to grab the prop book floating on the body. Judging from Dean's strength, the prop cards in his prop book definitely contained many extremely valuable prop cards, but Su Tong didn't even take a look at them and decisively chose to extract all his prop points. As a famous assassin player, Dean followed all the ancient assassin's creed, including the desire for wealth. Therefore, he actually accumulated a large amount of script points in his prop book, as many as 980 points. This is part of the time he spent entering the script world, otherwise he would probably have thousands of script points. With such a huge fortune, Dean was certainly paving the way for him to be promoted to a certified player, but he didn't expect that he would die so miserably. Su Tong accepted the script score, but there was no trace of joy on his face. He looked coldly at Jianshu, Li 11 and the others and walked towards them. Until he stopped in front of the line mark that the master drew on the ground last time. He was the one who harmed the master, so he should inherit this destiny. He took out the Lingro blood revitalizing pill and put it in his mouth. He raised his eyebrows and called out from behind him. As soon as he stretched out his hand, Fa Cai flew out from the hall and turned into two large golden knives, which were held by Su Tong. The blade pointed at the people in front of him. Those who jump over the line, will be killed without mercy. Note, I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival. I still owe you 2 updates. Last time I will send my little boy to school tomorrow and I will update more when I get back. This wave of climax is destined to be spectacular. After writing this wave of climax, this volume it's almost over.